Okay, chapter 1, the getting started. So these will be the concepts. This will go through some of the math concepts that you'll end up using in chapter 1. Chapter 1 is really dealing with money, as is chapter 6. But chapter 1 is more to do with earning income and all the calculations that are involved with that. So let's take a look at question 1. It says write each fraction as a decimal. See if you can do these without a calculator. Remember that when you're dividing by 100, it's a power of 10, and the number of zeros tells you how many place values to move the decimal point. That's sort of the fast way of remembering it. So the decimal is understood to be right after the ones digit, and so we would be moving 2 to the left and fill in with a 0. And it's always good to have a 0 in front of the decimal point, sort of best form. Next one, moving the decimal 2 to the left, so 0.17. Here, decimal 2 to the left, 0.75. Here, decimal 1 to the left, 0.6. Really, that's to help us with percents. So in the next question, write each percent as a decimal. Remember, this symbol, this percent symbol, is really made up with a 1 and 2 zeros. And percent is anything out of 100. So 5% means 5 out of 100. So that's really where that symbol came from. I didn't know that when I was your age, but found that out later, so kind of cool. In any case, 5% is 5 over 100, and then, of course, to show that as a decimal, moving 2 to the left. Okay, so really, you don't have to show it as a fraction. You can really convert right away. You're always going to move the decimal 2 to the left. So here, 2 to the left would be 0.1. We don't have to put the 0 afterwards if it's a decimal. Okay, and then 2 to the left, 0.15. So any percent that's less than 100 will have a 0 decimal, right? 20% will be 0.2, 21.5. Again, you're moving 2 to the left, so 0.215, and 2 to the left, you fill in with a 0. So there's your 0, and you, as I said, proper form has a 0 out front. Okay, next one, calculating each percent. So of means multiply. Just always remember that. The word of always means multiply. So 0.04 times 500. What you could do is do 4 times 500 if you didn't have a calculator, and then move the decimal 2 to the left. So 4 times 500 is, 4 times 5 is 20 with 2 zeros, and then you move the decimal 2 to the left. So that would be 20. But on your calculator, and some of you might have a scientific calculator with a percent symbol, which you can use. Graphing calculators actually don't. So you just do that calculation in your head. Okay, 4%, you can either do it in your head at 0.04, or you can go 4 divided by 100, and then multiply by 500, all in one step. Okay, that's 20. Then 12% of 750, that's 0.12 times 750. So I'll always want to see you show the actual math that you're using. So 0.12 times 750. That's 90. 0 point here, this will be 0.035 times 800. So 0.035 times 800, 28, and then 0.0225 times 600, is 13.5. Okay, then here's the tech tip in terms of multiplying. So this is if you have a percent key, you can go 420 times 5%, or you can go 5% times 420, okay? Or some of you might have to use the second key, depends on your calculator. If it doesn't have a percent, so then you convert 5% to a decimal, multiply, or as I said, 5 divided by 100. Okay, so next one's here, 6% of 80. So in your calculator, 6%, I'm just going to clear it, is 0.06 times 80. Okay, 4.8. Then 12% is 0.12 times 584, 70.08. Then 8.5% is 0.085 times 620 is 52.7. And if you think, you kind of want to use some of your mental math. 10% of 620 is a really easy number to calculate. You're just moving the decimal one to the left. So that would be 62. 8.5% is a little less than 10%. So is this a little less than 62? Yeah, it is. Okay. Next one, 2.5%. So I would show that as 2.5%. So convert that and then enter it as a decimal without a percent. Oops. Okay, 86.25. All right, go to the next page. Then this is kind of working backwards. Write each decimal as a fraction. So you've done this back in elementary and junior high. So you've got 25 over, so you count up the decimal digits. There's 2 of them. And so that's over 100, 2 zeros. Okay, then always in lowest terms. So you know 25 goes into 100 4 times, so that's 1/4. Then 75 over 100. Again, 25 goes into 75 3 times, into 100 4 times. And think about money, right? This unit is about money. 25 cents is 1/4 of a dollar, right? And we actually call the coin a quarter. 75 cents is 3/4 of a dollar. We actually say you would have 3/4 if you were looking at actual money. Then the next one, so there are 2 decimal places. That's a 0. So you might show it as 80 over 100 to start, or you don't need to worry about this. So you could just go right to 8 over 10, okay, because the 0 doesn't affect that. Now, saying that, it's not in lowest terms. So for sure, 10 goes into both. So just divide out those zeros, and then you've got 8/10, and 2 goes into both. So you're left with 4/5. And then 0.08, notice how it's the same digits but switched around. This does matter. So you don't usually show that 0. You just show the 8, right? 0.8 is just 8. And it is over 100. Then 4 goes into that twice. 4 goes into the denominator 25 times. Okay. Write each length of the time in hours and minutes. So this is an important thing to remember. There are 60 minutes in an hour. And sometimes we forget that. Okay, so it's not 100 minutes. So some people will say 8.5 hours is 8 hours and 5 minutes. It's not, okay? It's 8 hours, for sure the whole number, so 24, 17, 40, but then you take the 0.5 and you multiply that by 60. So 0.5 hours times 60 minutes in an hour, and you can see that the hours divide out. So 0.5 of 60 is 30 minutes, right? 0.5 in an hour is half an hour, which is 30 minutes. 0.75 of an hour, think about that on a clock. I know a lot of you use digital now, but 3/4 of an hour, you'd have your hands going this way, right? So that would be 45 minutes. Or you can go 0.75 times 60 on your calculator. 0.25 of an hour goes from there to there. That's 15 minutes, or 0.25 times 60. 0.3 of an hour, maybe you don't think about that as much. 0.3 times 60, that's 3 times 60 is 180. Move the decimal one to the left is 18. Or you can do it on your calculator. Okay? So then here, convert back. Write each length of time as a decimal in hours. So 12, so these are all going to have whatever hours will be the beginning. And then 30 minutes, so think about what 30 minutes out of 60 minutes is. Hopefully you remember that 30 minutes is half an hour, so that's 0.5. Hopefully you remember that 15 minutes out of 60 is a quarter of an hour, right? So 0.25. 45 minutes is 3/4 of an hour, 0.75. 20 minutes out of 60, so that gets you to the 4, so from there to there, really divides that into 3 parts, right? So that's 1/3, which is 0.3 repeating. Okay. And then total number of hours. So this is kind of like adding up how many hours you worked in a week, which we'll be doing in this unit. What is the total number of hours? If there's 8 hours a day that you work for 5 days a week for 50 weeks. So 8 hours a day for 5 days a week, okay, that would give you 40 hours a week for 50 weeks. So you just keep multiplying. So here, that would be 8 times 5 times 50. So 2,000 hours. And a lot of times there's 50 work weeks in a year if you're given 2 weeks of vacation. Then the next one, 7.5 hours for 6 days a week for 52 weeks. So 7.5 times 6 times 52. So 2,340. Then 42 hours a week for 2 years. So you have to remember how many weeks are in a year. So there's 52 weeks in 1 year. So that means if you work 42 hours a week times 52 weeks in a year times 2 years. Okay, so that might be how many hours you work. Usually you do get vacation, but we'll just do that calculation for right now. Then 120 hours a month for 5 years. Okay, so how many months in a year? So there are 12 months in a year. Okay, so we're going to do 120 hours a month times 12 months times 5 years. So that's 7,200 hours. Okay. Now, sometimes when you get paid overtime, you get paid double time or time and a half, and that's why there's practice here. What is double the value of each number? So this was your rate of pay, and you get paid double the amount. 2 times 12 is 24. That's all that this is practicing. 2 times 13.5. Think about not using your calculator. 2 times 13 is 26. 2 times 0.5 is 1, so that would be 27. 2 times 14 is 28. 2 times 0.25 is 0.5. 2 times 11 is 22. 2 times 0.8 is 1.6. So this will really be 23.6. Or you can use your calculator. Next one, 10 times 1.5. Really that moves the decimal one to the right, so 15. 15 times 1.5, so you might remember that 15 squared is 225, and then with 1 decimal place. Okay, or you can think about multiplying by 1.5 is keeping 14.5 and adding on half of 14.5, which would be 7.25. So that would be 21.75. So keeping 13.4 and adding on half of that, which would be 6.7. And so that would be 1920.1. And then these are just operations that you might end up using. I'm going to say use your calculator for these, because we're not going to ask you probably to do these types of questions without a calculator. So 9.06, 12.66 minus 4.38, 4.7 times 5, and then 40 divided by a decimal is going to end up being bigger, right? So 200. Okay, so that's the end of getting started.